The first sign came not with a bang, but with an impossible silence. At 3:47 Universal Coordinated Time, every communication satellite above Earth flickered, then went dark. Radio telescopes across multiple continents registered a massive energy signature that defied current scientific understanding. In mission control centers from Houston to Beijing, technicians stared at screens that had transformed from complex data streams to uniform blank surfaces. Dr. Aisha Kapoor, lead researcher at the Planetary Defense Initiative, was the first to recognize the anomaly. Her fingers danced across holographic interfaces, triangulating the source of the disturbance. The energy signature wasn't random. It was deliberate, structured, almost like a message waiting to be decoded. "This isn't a natural phenomenon," she muttered, her voice cutting through the tense silence of the research facility. Moments later, the global communication networks erupted. Not with chaos, but with a single crystal-clear transmission that appeared simultaneously on every screen, every digital display, every network device on the planet. The message transcended language, translating itself instantaneously into the viewer's native tongue. A being unlike anything humanity had ever imagined materialized in high-definition clarity. Admiral Krelax of the Zarkon Galactic Empire stood nearly 3 meters tall, his crystalline exoskeleton refracting light in impossible geometric patterns. 6 eyes, each a different color and seemingly independent, scanned an unseen horizon. When he spoke, the sound seemed to bypass audio receptors, drilling directly into the listener's consciousness. "Inhabitants of the third planet," the transmission began. "Your technological signature has been detected. Your civilization has reached a preliminary stage of interstellar awareness. The Zarkon Galactic Empire formally acknowledges your existence. In living rooms, government buildings, and research facilities around the world, humanity held its collective breath. By established galactic protocols," Krelax continued, "your planet is hereby claimed as a protectorate of the Zarkon Empire. You will prepare for immediate assimilation. Your resources, technological infrastructure, and biological potential will be integrated into our collective system." The Admiral's multiple eyes seemed to look directly at every viewer simultaneously, a technological feat that was itself a demonstration of the vast technological gap between humanity and this alien civilization. "You have 72 standard planetary rotations to prepare for our arrival. Resistance is mathematically improbable. Cooperation will be beneficial." The transmission ended as abruptly as it began, leaving behind a global moment of stunned silence. In the United Nations emergency session called within hours, representatives from every nation struggled to process the implications. The Chinese delegation spoke first, their diplomatic language carefully measured. "This appears to be a comprehensive threat to global sovereignty." A Russian diplomat interrupted, her voice tinged with a mix of fear and defiance. "Sovereignty. This is beyond politics. This is about our very existence as a species." Dr. Kapoor, now part of the emergency advisory team, understood something the politicians were just beginning to grasp. This wasn't just a military threat. It was a challenge to everything humanity believed about its place in the universe. The Zarkon Empire had made a fundamental miscalculation. They saw humans as a resource to be cataloged, a civilization to be processed. They didn't understand the core of human potential, the ability to unite, to innovate, to transform challenges into opportunities. What the aliens perceived as a simple administrative procedure, humanity would transform into a battle for survival. And humanity was just getting started. 48 hours after the ultimatum, the world transformed. The first breakthrough came in an abandoned semiconductor factory on the outskirts of Sao Paulo. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a makeshift war room, her team a kaleidoscope of humanity. Scientists, engineers, and experts from every corner of the globe. Whiteboards covered every wall, connected by intricate webs of red string mapping out potential strategies. "We're not just fighting a technological battle," Elena declared, her voice steady despite the weight of their circumstances. "We're fighting a conceptual war." To her left, Nikolay Volkov, a former Russian cybersecurity specialist turned global defense strategist, nodded. His fingers danced across multiple holographic displays, integrating data from satellites, research stations, and underground communication networks. The aliens expect a unified military response, he said. Instead, we'll give them something they can't comprehend. Global cooperation had never looked like this before. Tech companies that were once bitter rivals now shared research in real time. Military resources were being redirected not into traditional defense, but into a complex, adaptive response system. The Chinese quantum computing team worked alongside Indian environmental engineers. American neural network specialists collaborated with Brazilian climate scientists. In a converted research station deep in Antarctica, a breakthrough was brewing. Dr. Wei Zhang, leading a team of climate and computational experts, had discovered something extraordinary. By mapping the planet's electromagnetic fields, natural atmospheric patterns, and technological infrastructure as a single interconnected system, they were developing a planetary defense mechanism unlike anything in human history. It's not about blocking their technology, Wei explained during a global conference call. It's about making our entire planet a complex, adaptive network that can predict and neutralize threats. Meanwhile, in the halls of power, traditional geopolitical boundaries dissolved. The United Nations Security Council met in an unprecedented continuous session, with representatives working in shifts to maintain a constant global strategy. Old grudges, economic competitions, and political rivalries seemed absurdly small in the face of an existential threat. A young diplomat from Kenya, Sarah Ochieng, found herself at the center of this new world. Her background in conflict resolution and systems theory made her invaluable to the emerging global response team. "We're not just preparing a defense," she told her colleagues. "We're creating a new way of thinking about human potential." The global communication network became something entirely new. What the Zarkon Empire had seen as a primitive infrastructure was rapidly transforming into a living, breathing intelligence network. Hackers, researchers, engineers, and strategists from every continent worked in a continuous, fluid collaboration that defied traditional hierarchies. In Silicon Valley, a collective of independent researchers developed an advanced predictive algorithm that could model potential alien technological approaches with unprecedented accuracy. In Mumbai, a team of environmental engineers began redesigning global infrastructure to create natural electromagnetic interference patterns. Dr. Rodriguez looked at the growing network of collaboration with a sense of hope. The aliens had expected a fragmented, competitive species. Instead, they would find a planet that had discovered its true potential in unity. "They think they're coming to claim a resource," she said to Volkov, a rare smile crossing her face. "They have no idea what they're actually walking into." With each passing hour, humanity was no longer just preparing a defense. They were reimagining what it meant to be a collective species, turning the entire planet into a complex, adaptive organism, capable of facing a threat beyond anything in their previous understanding. The countdown to the alien arrival had begun, and humanity was just getting started. The Antarctic Research Station hummed with an electric intensity that had nothing to do with its advanced equipment. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic display that seemed to breathe with living data, her team working in a synchronicity that defied traditional scientific collaboration. "We're not just creating a technology," she explained to Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, a quantum computing expert who had flown in from Tokyo. "We're developing a language that the aliens can't understand." The breakthrough had come from an unexpected intersection of disciplines. Climate modeling algorithms, neural network designs, and quantum computing principles were being woven together into something entirely new. What began as a defensive strategy was evolving into a revolutionary approach to understanding complex systems. Dr. Wei Zhang, who had been quiet for hours, suddenly looked up from her workstation. "Look at this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The holographic display shifted, revealing a complex pattern that seemed to pulse with its own intelligence. It was a predictive model that could anticipate technological threats not just minutes or hours in advance, but potentially days or weeks ahead. Nikolay Volkov, the former cybersecurity specialist, leaned in. His eyes reflected the dancing holographic patterns. "It's more than a prediction system," he muttered. "It's a living, adaptive intelligence." The team had discovered something profound. By treating planetary systems, technological, environmental, informational, as a single, interconnected organism, they were creating a defense mechanism that was fundamentally different from any existing technological approach. Outside the research station, Antarctica's harsh landscape seemed to mirror the intensity of their work. Massive solar arrays and wind turbines generated power, while underground facilities protected their most sensitive equipment. It was a perfect metaphor for humanity's emerging strategy. Resilient, adaptive, drawing strength from seemingly inhospitable conditions. Sarah Oching, the diplomatic systems expert, joined the team via a holographic connection. Her image flickered slightly, a reminder of the massive technological challenges they were undertaking. "The UN Emergency Council wants a preliminary report," she said. "But how do we explain something that doesn't fit any existing framework?" Dr. Rodriguez smiled. "We don't explain. We demonstrate." The team had been working for 72 consecutive hours, fueled by a combination of cutting-edge nutrition packets, carefully managed stimulants, and an almost spiritual commitment to their mission. They were no longer just scientists. They were architects of humanity's survival. Dr. Tanaka's quantum computing models began to interact with Dr. Zhang's climate prediction algorithms in ways nobody had anticipated. The holographic display transformed, showing potential technological interactions that seemed to dance and shift like living organisms. "It's a universal translation system," Dr. Rodriguez realized. "Not just for language, but for technological intent." The implications were staggering. They weren't just creating a defensive tool. They were developing a method to understand and potentially communicate with a technological intelligence completely foreign to human experience. Volkov, typically reserved, let out a rare laugh. "The Zarkon Empire thinks they're coming to claim a resource," he said. "They have no idea what they're walking into." As the Antarctic night fell, the research station became a beacon of human potential. Solar arrays caught the last remnants of twilight, wind turbines spun with a steady rhythm, and inside, a team of scientists from around the world continued their work. They were rewriting the rules of technological engagement, creating a defense that was more than just a shield. It was a statement of human capability, of our species' ability to transform challenges into opportunities. The countdown to the alien arrival continued, and humanity was ready. The world's most sophisticated digital battleground wasn't located in any military installation. It existed in the invisible realm of data, flowing through a network of interconnected minds that spanned continents, cultures, and disciplines. Marco Rodriguez sat in a dimly lit apartment in Buenos Aires, his fingers moving with surgical precision across a custom-built quantum interface. Around him, multiple holographic displays flickered with streams of code that would appear incomprehensible to most. But Marco was part of something much larger, a global collective of digital strategists who had transformed the internet into a living, breathing defensive organism. "We're not just breaking through their systems," Marco muttered to his global communication link. "We're rewriting the entire language of technological communication." Thousands of kilometers away, Yuki Nakamura in Osaka nodded, her own interface humming with complex algorithmic patterns. The global digital defense network operated like a massive distributed intelligence. No single point of control, no central command, just a fluid, adaptive system that could reconfigure itself faster than any traditional military strategy. Their target was the Zarkon Empire's communication infrastructure, a network so advanced it had conquered hundreds of star systems. But the aliens had never encountered anything like human creativity. The first wave of the digital assault was subtle. Small perturbations in data streams, nearly imperceptible shifts in communication protocols. The goal wasn't destruction, but confusion. Marco and his team were creating a digital labyrinth that would make the Zarkon Empire's most secure systems collapse under the weight of their own complexity. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, no relation to Marco, but part of the same global network, monitored the operation from the Antarctic Research Station. "They're trying to establish a communication pattern," she observed. "We need to make that impossible." Across the globe, a new kind of warfare was being waged. Hackers who would have once competed against each other now worked in perfect synchronization. A cybersecurity expert from Russia collaborated in real time with a network engineer from Kenya. A blockchain specialist from India shared insights with a quantum computing researcher from Canada. The Zarkon Empire's communication networks began to experience unexplainable anomalies. Messages would route through impossible paths. Encryption keys would spontaneously transform. Entire communication branches would fold in on themselves, creating digital dead ends that defied logical explanation. In the Zarkon fleet's central command, Admiral Krulax watched in growing frustration as their most sophisticated communication systems began to break down. What had seemed like a simple administrative process of planetary conquest was turning into something far more complex. "It's like the entire planetary network is alive," muttered a junior Zarkon communication specialist, her multiple eyes blinking in confusion. Marco allowed himself a brief smile. That was exactly the point. The digital assault wasn't about destruction. It was about communication, or more precisely, the deconstruction of communication. Each intervention was a message. Humanity would not be a passive resource to be claimed. Yuki's interface suddenly lit up with a complex pattern of data. "We've breached their tertiary communication network," she announced to the global team. "They don't even realize we're inside their systems." The beauty of their approach was its organic nature. Traditional military strategies relied on fixed points of attack. This was different. The human digital defense was a living system, constantly adapting, constantly moving. As the Zarkon Empire's communication networks began to fragment, humanity was writing a new language of resistance, not through traditional means of conflict, but through the most powerful tool they possessed: collective intelligence. The countdown to the alien arrival continued, and humanity was rewriting the rules of engagement. The Earth itself became a weapon. Dr. Wei Zhang stood in the central monitoring station of the Planetary Adaptive Network, watching as the planet transformed into a living, breathing defensive system. What had begun as isolated research had become humanity's most extraordinary achievement, turning an entire planet into a complex, adaptive intelligence. Massive arrays of solar collectors, wind turbines, and experimental energy systems began to pulse with a synchronized rhythm. Electromagnetic fields shifted and realigned in patterns that would have been impossible just weeks earlier. The planet was no longer just a collection of geographical features and human infrastructure. It had become a unified, responsive organism. "We're not just defending," Dr. Zhang explained to the global coordination team. "We're communicating in a language the aliens can't understand." The strategy was brilliantly simple in its complexity. Every technological system on the planet, from the smallest internet-connected device to massive power grids and satellite networks, was being integrated into a single adaptive network. Natural systems were incorporated as well. Ocean currents, atmospheric patterns, even the planet's geological responses were being mapped and synchronized. In the Arctic research stations, teams of environmental engineers worked alongside quantum physicists. They were creating interference patterns that could manipulate electromagnetic fields on a planetary scale. Weather systems became potential defensive mechanisms. Ocean currents could be subtly redirected to create complex energy signatures that would confuse any incoming technological scans. Nikolay Volkov, monitoring the global network, observed something extraordinary. "We're not just blocking their technology," he said. "We're making our entire planet unreadable." The Zarkon Empire's most advanced sensors began to experience inexplicable failures. Scanning systems that could map entire star systems with microscopic precision now encountered something entirely new, a planet that seemed to shift and change at the quantum level. Sarah Oching, coordinating the diplomatic response, understood the deeper implication. This isn't about creating a shield, she told the Emergency Global Council. This is about fundamentally changing how we interact with technological threats. Deep in the Pacific Ocean, experimental underwater energy collectors began to resonate with specific frequency patterns. In the Sahara Desert, solar arrays created complex electromagnetic signatures that seemed to breathe with their own intelligence. Mountain ranges became natural signal amplification systems. Even the planet's ionosphere was being carefully manipulated. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the global systems interact with a sense of wonder. What they had created was more than a defensive system. It was a planetary-scale intelligence that could adapt, respond, and communicate in ways no alien civilization had ever encountered. The Zarkon fleet's initial scans of Earth began to return nonsensical data. Where they expected to find a predictable planetary system, they encountered something that defied all known technological understanding. Planetary energy signatures fluctuated in impossible ways. Technological scans would suddenly encounter complex interference patterns that seemed to have their own form of intelligence. "It's like the entire planet is watching us," muttered a junior Zarkon scanning specialist, her multiple eyes blinking in confusion. That was exactly the point. Humanity had transformed its greatest perceived weakness, a single, seemingly vulnerable planet, into its most powerful strength. They weren't just preparing a defense. They were redefining the very concept of planetary intelligence. As the countdown to the alien arrival continued, Earth pulsed with a complex, adaptive energy. A living system that was more than the sum of its parts, a planet that was ready. And the Zarkon Empire had no idea what was coming. The first direct communication came unexpectedly. Ambassador Aria Chen stood before the United Nations Emergency Council, her tailored suit a stark contrast to the tension that filled the room. Behind her, a holographic display flickered with complex data streams and communication patterns developed by the global research team. "They're trying to understand us," she said, her voice calm and measured. But understanding isn't the same as comprehending. The Zarkon Empire's diplomatic attempts had become increasingly frustrated. Their standard communication protocols, which had successfully integrated hundreds of planetary civilizations, were failing spectacularly against humanity's complex, adaptive response. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the Antarctic Research Station, her team analyzing every nuance of the alien communication attempts. "It's not just a language barrier," she explained to Nikolai Volkov. "They're encountering a fundamentally different way of thinking about existence." The alien communications were a masterpiece of technological complexity. Multilayered quantum encryption, holographic data streams, and communication patterns that would have overwhelmed any other known civilization. But humanity had developed something unexpected. A collective psychological resilience that transformed every interaction into a strategic opportunity. Sarah Oching, leading the diplomatic response team, had discovered something profound. The Zarkon Empire approached planetary integration as a purely administrative process. They saw civilizations as resources to be cataloged, processed, and integrated. Humanity was presenting them with something entirely different. A collective consciousness that refused to be categorized. "We're not negotiating," Sarah told the global team. "We're demonstrating." Each communication attempt from the Zarkon Empire was met with a response that defied their understanding. Scientific teams would respond with complex philosophical frameworks. Diplomatic channels would return communications filled with artistic expressions, mathematical proofs, and cultural narratives that seemingly had no direct relevance to the conversation. Marco Rodriguez, leading the digital communication team, had developed an approach that was part scientific strategy, part psychological warfare. "We're going to show them the true depth of human unpredictability," he explained, his fingers dancing across a quantum interface that seemed to breathe with its own intelligence. The Zarkon leadership found themselves increasingly frustrated. Admiral Krelax, reviewing the communication logs, experienced something unprecedented in his centuries of galactic administration: confusion. Their standard integration protocols relied on identifying a civilization's core motivations, primary resources, and potential value to the galactic infrastructure. Humanity presented a moving target that defied all standard analysis. One moment, they appeared to be a technologically emerging species. The next, they demonstrated scientific capabilities that suggested a civilization far beyond their apparent development stage. "They're not resisting," one of Krelax's advisors noted. "They're redefining the entire concept of resistance." Cultural databases were uploaded, only to be returned with complex annotations, artistic reinterpretations, and philosophical deconstructions that expanded the original content in ways the Zarkon had never encountered. Mathematical models were met with creative reimaginings that suggested multiple simultaneous approaches to problem-solving. Dr. Wei Zong understood the deeper strategy. "We're not just defending," she told her team. "We're showing them the true nature of human potential." Each communication became a performance, a demonstration of humanity's collective intelligence. Scientific teams, artists, philosophers, and strategists worked in a synchronized dance that transformed every interaction into a multidimensional statement of human capability. The Zarkon Empire was discovering something terrifying. Humanity was not a resource to be claimed. They were a civilization that could transform any attempt at control into an opportunity for creative expression. As the countdown to the alien arrival continued, humanity waited, not with fear, but with a collective anticipation of the moment when the universe would truly understand what it meant to encounter human potential. The moment arrived with a silence more profound than any sound. Admiral Krelax watched in growing disbelief as the Zarkon fleet's most advanced systems began to unravel. What had seemed like a simple planetary conquest was transforming into the most complex challenge in the Empire's history. The first signs of breakdown came subtly. Communication networks fragmented. Sensor arrays produced nonsensical data. Quantum encryption systems, which had never failed in thousands of planetary integrations, began to twist and reconfigure in ways that defied all known technological principles. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the Antarctic Research Station, her team working with a synchronicity that seemed almost supernatural. "We're not just defending," she said to Nikolai Volkov. "We're demonstrating the true nature of adaptive intelligence." Across the planet, humanity's integrated defense system came to life. It wasn't a traditional response. No massive weapons, no direct confrontation. Instead, the entire planet became a complex, living system that adapted faster than the Zarkon could comprehend. Satellite networks began to dance. Power grids reshuffled themselves with impossible precision. Even the planet's natural systems, ocean currents, atmospheric patterns, geological responses, synchronize into a unified, responsive network. Marco Rodriguez, leading the digital intervention team, watched as their strategies unfolded. Billions of interconnected devices, from the smallest sensor to massive research installations, worked as a single, breathing organism. The Zarkon fleet found its most advanced scanning technologies rendered completely ineffective. "They're trying to map us," Marco muttered to his global team. "But we're impossible to map." Sarah Ochieng monitored the diplomatic channels, her approach a perfect blend of strategic communication and creative expression. Every attempt by the Zarkon to establish a standard communication protocol was met with a response that expanded beyond their understanding. In the Zarkon fleet's command center, Admiral Krelax experienced something unprecedented in his centuries of galactic administration: genuine uncertainty. Their invasion protocols, which had successfully integrated hundreds of planetary civilizations, began to collapse. Technological systems that should have provided absolute control now produced nothing but confusion. It was as if the entire planet was a living, thinking entity that was actively resisting categorization. Dr. Weizong's planetary adaptive network reached its most complex stage. Natural and technological systems intertwined in ways that defied traditional understanding. Electromagnetic fields shifted with an intelligence that seemed almost sentient. Weather patterns became complex communication systems. Geological responses transformed into adaptive interference mechanisms. The intervention was beautiful in its complexity. Humanity wasn't fighting. They were communicating in a language that the Zarkon Empire had never encountered. Quantum communication networks created interference patterns that made their most advanced scanning technologies useless. Digital systems became living labyrinths that reconfigured themselves faster than any attempt to analyze them. Planetary energy signatures fluctuated in impossible ways. "It's like the entire planet is watching us," muttered a junior Zarkon specialist, multiple eyes blinking in confusion. That was exactly the point. The Zarkon fleet found itself increasingly isolated. Communication networks collapsed. Scanning technologies produced nothing but meaningless data. Their most advanced integration protocols were being systematically deconstructed by a planetary intelligence that refused to be understood through traditional methods. Admiral Krelax made a decision that would be remembered in galactic histories. Rather than continue a hopeless attempt at conquest, the fleet would retreat. Humanity had done more than defend itself. They had fundamentally challenged the entire concept of planetary integration. As the Zarkon fleet began its withdrawal, Earth pulsed with a complex, adaptive energy. The living system that was more than the sum of its parts. A planet that had shown the universe something entirely new. The intervention was complete, and humanity had rewritten the rules of galactic interaction. 30 days after the Zarkon fleet's retreat, the world was forever changed. Dr. Elinda Rodriguez stood before the United Nations General Assembly, her presentation a testament to humanity's extraordinary journey. The massive holographic display behind her showed the complex planetary defense network they had developed, a living, breathing system that had redefined the concept of planetary intelligence. "We didn't just defend ourselves," she explained, her voice carrying the weight of their collective achievement. "We demonstrated a new way of understanding existence." The global research teams from the Antarctic Station, led by Dr. Weizong and Nikolai Volkov, had begun publishing their findings. Scientific journals across the world struggled to categorize the breakthrough. It wasn't just a technological achievement. It was a fundamental reimagining of how intelligence systems could interact. Sarah Oching, now heading the newly formed Planetary Coordination Council, understood the deeper implications. The alien encounter had done more than just unite humanity. It had revealed their true potential. In research facilities around the world, teams continued to explore the adaptive network they had created. Marco Rodriguez's digital communication team discovered that the planetary defense system they had developed was still evolving. It was learning, adapting, becoming something more than anyone had initially imagined. The Zarkon Empire's diplomatic channels remained silent, but intelligence reports suggested massive internal discussions about the unprecedented encounter. Galactic communication networks buzzed with speculation about the Earth anomaly, a civilization that had completely defied all known integration protocols. "We're not just a species anymore," Dr. Zhang told her research team. "We've become something more." The global collaborative approach that had emerged during the crisis didn't disappear. Instead, it became a new model of human interaction. Nations that had once been competitors now worked in unprecedented harmony. Scientific research became truly global, with teams from every continent working on solving humanity's most pressing challenges. Ambassador Aria Chen, speaking at an international conference, captured the sentiment perfectly. "Our greatest achievement wasn't defeating an alien threat," she said. "It was discovering our own potential." The technological breakthroughs were extraordinary. The planetary adaptive network they had developed began to show applications far beyond defensive strategies. Climate change solutions, energy production, communication technologies, everything was being reimagined. Universities around the world began developing new interdisciplinary programs that reflected the collaborative approach that had saved the planet. Students were taught not just to specialize, but to think across disciplines, to see connections where others saw boundaries. In the Antarctic Research Station, the team that had been at the center of humanity's response continued their work. They were no longer just scientists. They were architects of a new way of understanding intelligence, cooperation, and potential. The Zarkon Empire's official communication, when it finally came, was unlike anything in galactic diplomatic history. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a threat. It was a request for dialogue, a recognition that humanity represented something entirely new in their understanding of intelligent civilizations. "We miscalculated." Admiral Krelax's official statement read, "Earth is not a resource to be claimed. It is a phenomenon to be understood." As the first anniversary of the attempted invasion approached, humanity looked to the stars with a new perspective. They were no longer just inhabitants of a small planet in a vast universe. They were architects of a new understanding of intelligence, cooperation, and potential. The planetary adaptive network continued to evolve, and somewhere in the depths of space, other civilizations began to take notice. Humanity had arrived, and the universe would never be the same.